Okay, I'm very interested in this story because I hate being lied to and I hate being propagandized. And this weekend, there was an all-out propaganda campaign trying to make it seem as if Israel is intentionally starving the people of Gaza. I hate being lied to, especially by the media networks. They lied to us about COVID. They lied to us about the vaccines. They lied to us about open borders. They lied to us Hunter Biden laptop. Joining us now is Rabbi Walicki, a great friend, and thank you so much for defending me the other day. Rabbi Walicki, you're also the YouTube, people can find you on YouTube, Israel 365. Rabbi, let's just go through the facts here, and then let's get into the lies. What is the situation in Gaza as the truth would bear it out, not the New York Times propagandist network?
Well, if we're talking about the starvation lie, and thank you, Charlie. Thank you for having me on to talk about this. It's so important because this is really pure propaganda, as you say. So since the beginning of the war, since October 7th, the whole issue of the food getting into Gaza and how much food is getting in has been weaponized by Hamas and by the whole pro-Hamas crowd. And what they're doing most recently is claiming that there's a starvation crisis. The quantities of food, I'm not going to get into the weeds of the numbers, but the quantities of food that have been brought into the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war and month over month is enough to feed the Gaza Strip, according to the World Food Program's numbers for what it takes to feed people, for longer than this war has gone on, for about 27 months worth of food. And there's plenty of food getting into the Gaza Strip. But what's happening is that Hamas is trying to perpetuate this narrative that Gazans are starving because starting about 2 months ago, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is run by Americans and is in cooperation with the Israelis, has started distributing food, started distributing humanitarian aid directly to the people of Gaza. And why is that important? Because until they started doing that, the only way for Gazans to get food was to get it from Hamas. All of the tons and tons of food, all the truckloads of food that have been coming into the Gaza Strip as humanitarian aid since the beginning of the war until 2 months ago, were brought in by United Nations organizations that were working hand in glove with Hamas. It was going directly to Hamas, and then Hamas would sell it at exorbitant prices to the people, hoard it for themselves, take all the fuel to fuel their war machine, use it to recruit new recruits into Hamas, and it was basically Hamas's oxygen. The estimates now by the United States, by the State Department, is that Hamas has made approximately $500 million just from selling aid to the people of the Gaza Strip since the war has began. So Israel has realized for a long time that this is a problem because while the aid has to get to people, the aid is also fueling Hamas. So 2 months ago, they started this new program where in areas that are under Israeli security control on the Gaza Strip, they distribute the food directly to the Gazan citizens. All the aid is supposed to be free. In fact, there are videos and pictures online of packages marked not for sale being sold by Hamas vendors to the people of the Gaza Strip. So what's happening now is because food is being distributed directly to the Gazan citizens at these distribution centers, that's cutting off Hamas's oxygen because the people can get food directly from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. They don't have to pay exorbitant prices to Hamas, and Hamas is both losing control of the population and also losing their cash flow. So they started perpetuating this starvation narrative really just over the course of the last couple of weeks. It has no basis in fact. We see this even from the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas's own numbers for casualties, for deaths throughout this war. There's nobody dying of starvation in the Gaza Strip. But you could also see it looking at the pictures on your screen right now. We know what starving people look like. These are Gazans. They're not emaciated. They're not starving. The people of Gaza are not starving. But Hamas needs to perpetuate this narrative so that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is discredited and they could go back to the old system of all of the food and aid going through the UN to Hamas so they can retain control over the population and keep their cash flow going. There's a lot more to this story than that. I don't know how into the weeds you want me to go, but if people go to our YouTube channel, Israel 365 YouTube, we've been covering this for months.
What do Andrea Bocelli, Steph Curry, Justin Bieber, and Tim Tebow have in common? All of their mothers were encouraged to end their pregnancies. When a woman faces an unplanned pregnancy, she is often pressured to end her child's life. She wants to make the right choice, but society and those around her are telling her that her baby is not a life. That's where the Ministry of Preborn steps in. Preborn and their network of clinics offers compassionate, loving care to mothers and the support they need to help them choose life, including a free ultrasound. Once a mother hears their child's beautiful heartbeat, she is twice as likely to choose life. If you consider yourself pro-life, it's time to join forces with Preborn. I'm a donor, and you should be too. Together, we can empower women to choose life, empower the truth of motherhood, transforms families and futures. One ultrasound is just $28, and a $140 gift will help to rescue 5 babies. When you donate monthly, you'll receive stories and pictures of lives you helped to save. Please dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Charlie. That is preborn.com/Charlie, sponsored by Preborn. Yes, so let's just put this picture up here. This is what really set me off. And these lies against Israel are relentless. This is a mother holding a baby. And by the looks of it, this is pure visual warfare. Plug a 309. This is all this is. This is propaganda, emotional, visual, optical warfare. Optical warfare. And so no one likes to see what you're looking at here. Looks like a kid who's starving to death, right? So the whole story says this. The story says young, old, and sick starved to death in Gaza. That is the front page of the New York Times. And so the picture they're using is of Muhammad al-Matawak, a child with a muscular disorder, and they're using that as the face of famine in Gaza. And so what you are saying, Rabbi, just to respond to the New York Times here, I'm going to read the New York Times just for people to understand. Israel, it's got a little blurry, but it says that trading of blame and chaos as violence hit aid routes. There is nothing here. They are starving to death. And then the picture they are using is a young kid who tragically is suffering from a muscular disorder, but he's not starving to death. So just to repeat what you're saying, Rabbi, you're saying that there is no starvation in Gaza. Is that correct?
Look, it could be that that in certain areas under Hamas control, where they still control things and are hoarding the food, that they're not distributing it in order to create more of a starvation and a desperation problem so that Gazans could be going hungry so that they can perpetuate the narrative. And that's not just a conspiracy that I'm saying. Just the other day, there was drone footage released by the Israelis to debunk the whole starvation narrative of 1,000 truckloads of humanitarian aid that had been delivered into the areas that are still under Hamas control, that were sitting on the other side of the Gaza border, meaning on the Gaza side of the border, 1,000 truckloads sitting there for weeks and weeks. No one was coming to pick it up. And the UN was saying they had logistical problems. And then but right after Israel released that drone footage of these 900 truckloads, over the last couple of days, hundreds and hundreds of those truckloads have been picked up because they were humiliated by the release of this drone footage that showed that they simply weren't taking the aid into the Gaza Strip. Now, let me make it clear. 1,000 truckloads of aid is about what it takes to feed the entire Gaza Strip for 2 weeks. And a significant portion of the Gaza Strip is being fed now by this other organization, the American organization, the Gaza Humanitarian Fund. So for the Gazans who remain under Hamas control, this 1,000 truckloads is probably a month's worth of food, and Hamas was simply not picking it up.
Listen, I'm going to play this piece of tape here, live from Mount Aid. This is quite a video. But you think about it from Hamas's perspective. Hamas would want the people of Gaza to starve. Number one, they don't care about their own people. They're just cannon fodder for their radical Islamic aims. But secondly, if they can starve their people, then they can get a media narrative in the West to try to end the brokering of the war. So it's a circuitous way. It is a loophole way of them to use their own kids to starve, blame the Israelis for the starvation to get the war against the terrorists to stop. Let's play cut 312. This is from someone, Fish Burger. I want to make sure I get that. Fish Burger, who literally sees 1,000 things of aid. Look at all the aid that is not being distributed to the people of Gaza. Play cut 312.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen what 600 truck's worth of aid looks like. But this is what it looks like. It is a lot of aid. Wow. It's all going to waste because the UN refuses to distribute it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Look at this. Look at all that. Literally mountains of aid. Literally, look. Standing on it. Standing on mountains of aid.
I mean, that is an extraordinary amount of food and aid. So is the UN intentionally allowing the kids of Gaza to starve? What is going on here?
When you talk about the UN in Gaza, you're not talking about the people sitting in the United Nations in New York. The UN in Gaza is Hamas. That it has been for a long time. That's, if you remember all of the flap earlier on in the war about UNRWA, the UN Relief Works Agency, which it turned out that a lot of their employees were actually members of Hamas who even participated in October 7th. Because the UN employees in Gaza are all locals, and Hamas controls the UN in Gaza. So when you hear about the schools, for example, that Hamas uses as military sites, so that when Israel bombs a military installation and they say, oh, you bombed a school, those schools are UN schools. So there really is no distinction. It's kind of a fictional distinction between the UN and Hamas. When it comes to the Gaza Strip, the UN is just kind of a cover for Hamas.
Yeah, and it's just such a lie, and it's creating so much hysteria here in the United States. And just so we are clear again, this is the only way that Hamas can quote unquote survive the war is through a narrative war where they win sentimentality in the West. So they are willing to have their people starve, and they're willing to have invoked famine so that they can win points in the West and then blame it on Israel. These are the very same people that did this on October 7th against the innocent Israelis on October 7th. Why wouldn't they also do it to their own people? But they are.